Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we have a difficult subject to talk about. And it's difficult because nobody ever wants to think about this particular topic. And the topic is death and dying. There's just no way to make this topic palatable to anyone. It's the giant elephant in the room in every relationship. It's the giant elephant in the room your entire life, because we all know that eventually that life is going to end. One of my subscribers asked me after my Preparing for Divorce video came out if I would do a video on preparing for widowhood or widowerhood. And I thought that was an exceptionally good idea, a very good topic for an exposition on that particular subject. So, as the quote on the Today Discussing slide showed, we don't ever want to sin for knowing for whom the bell tolls, because eventually it always tolls for all of us. With that understanding, I want to look at two different situations. The first of those is sudden death. Nobody gets a text on the day that they are going to leave this planet that says, hey, guess what? You expire in 12 hours. That just doesn't happen. As a result of that, usually death comes as a surprise to all of us. And because of that, I think it's important to be prepared for it when it happens. First of all, you want to be prepared spiritually. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in a triunite God. And as a result of that, I feel pretty secure knowing that even though, I'm going to die and I'm not looking forward to it, and believe me, I'm not wanting it to happen today, that I'm pretty sure I know where I'm going. And so I'm not scared of dying. I'm scared of the pain and the discomfort that comes with it, but I'm not scared of dying. One of the things, however, that you deal with in that situation, death and dying, is if you die suddenly, there are all kinds of things that are left unsaid. Because there may be things that are left unsaid, it is sometimes a very good idea to sit down with a computer or a video camera and tell the people that you love, the people who are most important to you in your life, exactly how important they are, how much you love them, and what your hopes and wishes are for them in the future. And put that in the same place where you put your will, so that it can be found, and that hopefully it will be a source of comfort to those who follow you in death. It's an especially good idea to do this if you have ever had situations come up where you've had disagreements, or somebody moves away and you don't get a chance to see them as often, or perhaps something happened 4 or 5 years ago and you stopped talking. Sometimes when you think about the life that is there after you're gone, it's important to remember that some of the things that you said may have hurt and may cause angst later on. That's your opportunity to prevent that. Hey, if you're enjoying this content, please feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and makes it possible for me to continue to do this. That's it. That's the commercial. Sometimes, however, death is not sudden. Sometimes you find out that it's coming well in advance. A lot of times, people who are diagnosed with a terminal illness have both a blessing and a curse. They have a blessing in that they get to gather close to them the people who matter most, tell them what they feel and how much they love them, and they get to have them in their inner circle as they face, their final hours. And I think that's important. I think it's good in that respect, but it's bad in the fact that terminal illnesses rarely come without a great deal of physical compromise. people lose the ability to think on their own. They lose the ability to speak. Things like Alzheimer's are terrible, a terrible way to die. With cancer diagnoses, you get chemotherapy and radiation therapy that are almost as bad to go through as the disease itself and have a great deal of impact on your quality of life. In addition to that, the cost of things like long-term care, medical equipment, wheelchairs, pulse oximeters, things like that, the cost of all of that can decimate a family's finances and leave them in a much poorer situation than they were to begin with. So, blessing and curse. And there are some things that you can do in both situations to make it easier for the people you leave behind. And so that's what I want to talk about now. Even if you don't know you have a terminal illness, or even if you don't even suspect it, it's a good idea to do these things because you never know what tomorrow holds. Many people die just because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. They get hit by a stray bullet, or a car jumps a curb and knocks them over and kills them. There's all kinds of things that can end your life, and as a result of that, it's just a good idea to do some of these things so that you're prepared and your family is prepared for what comes next. So the first thing you want to do is list all of your assets. Pull up a computer file or a piece of paper and list all of your checking accounts, list all of your savings accounts, list all of your brokerage accounts. If you have a 401k, put that down. If you have other things, insurance policies, you want to list all of those. You want a complete record of everything that has anything to do with money on one sheet of paper or in one file so that it can be seized immediately and you can tell, someone can tell exactly what is in the bank account, exactly what was yours, and make it possible to understand exactly how their finances are going to be affected. However, merely doing that, listing all of that, is not enough. The next thing you have to do is you have to sort of prepare the groundwork for when you do die. And on your checking accounts, bank accounts, all of those, you can have them transfer on death to your spouse, or in some cases, if you have a will that creates a trust, and again, trust planning is not my strong suit. I would urge you to see a trust attorney, but a lot of times you can have them paid into a trust. Lots of different things that you can do. Now, if you want to set aside chunks of your savings for individuals that you are wanting to benefit when you pass away, one way to do that is to do Totten trusts, where the bank holds it in trust for those individuals in the event that you die. All of these things are mechanisms that you can use to protect the assets from the probate system, because the probate system, while it certainly divides assets, it also takes its fair share, some would say it's more than fair share, out of those assets. So if at all possible, you want everything to go outside of probate. Vehicles, you can do those as transfer on death instead of pay on death. If you have property, a house, and it's in your name only, if you have it with your wife as joint tenants, joint tenancy with rights of survivorship will immediately pass outside of probate. But if you don't have joint tenancy, if perhaps this was property that you owned prior to your marriage, then what you can do is you can have a beneficiary deed drawn up that essentially gives the property to the individual on your death, a beneficiary deed. It's an excellent way to pass property outside of probate. Another thing you can do, if you have a piece of property that you want to go to your children, for example, you can go to almost anybody who handles property transactions, a property lawyer. It probably won't cost you very much. You go in and you say, I want to redo my property deed, and what I want is I want a life estate in this property, so that I am reserving for myself the right to use and live there for the entire period of my life, and then on my death it goes to my son, my daughter, whomever. That's a good way to do it as well. It's sort of the same thing as a beneficiary deed. It's just accomplished in a little bit different way. And then, of course, the other thing is you need to have a will. Now, the reason you want to start the will before you get sick is because the majority of contests for wills happen as a result of who was closest to mom when she got sick, and who carried the load for the family, who saw to her, who attended to her, who made sure she got to the doctor, who made the decision to put her in the nursing home when that time came. All of those people, if that person gets a larger share than somebody else thinks they get, a lot of times what happens is you wind up with a contest where there is a claim of undue influence. In other words, this person hung around like a vulture waiting for grandma to die, and because of that she's sucked up all the good assets. Well, that's rarely the case, and usually these are the same people who didn't want to have anything to do until they got the phone call that said grandma was dead, and then they went, oh goody, I'm going to get money. So you need to protect not only your estate, but the person who handles your estate from those kinds of claims. So draw up your will now before there is ever any chance for anyone to claim that someone else had undue influence over you. And if at all possible, make specific gifts to specific people. If you are not going to leave a boatload of money to any of your individual heirs and you're going to benefit some other entity, let's say the Home for Homeless Cats, as my trusts and estates professor used to say. If you're going to give all your money to the Home for Homeless Cats, then what you need to do is you need to make specific gifts to them to indicate that you are not writing them out of your will. You're giving them a specific gift in the will. And then you also need to sit down and talk with them well before the point where you are approaching the where the fading out music is coming up on the record. Let's put it that way. You want to explain what you're doing. You want to explain why you're doing it. They may not like it, but you want to explain it. And the reason you want to explain it a year, 2 years before your death is so that A, this doesn't come as a surprise when that happens, and B, nobody can claim that there was undue influence. They knew about it long in advance, and they could have taken steps to change your mind if they wanted to, but often that's not the case. Sometimes you are going to have an heir who is just not going to be reasonable. They're not going to be reasonable with their brothers and sisters. They're not going to be reasonable with your spouse. They're not going to be reasonable with anybody. And for them, there is a special provision in the law called an ad terorem clause. And to make the ad terorem clause effective, what you have to do is give them something of a significant gift. $5,000, let's say. And then there is a provision that says if anyone challenges the gifts under this will, they will be disinherited. They will take nothing under this will. Your lawyer can write that to conform with the state law in your state. But that is certainly a way to protect, for example, your spouse, your children who have done good things for you, anybody you want to benefit under the will. That's a good way to do it if you have somebody that you know is going to be completely reckless and irresponsible. Also, make sure that you communicate in your will or in some other document, but preferably in a will so it's legal and binding, what your wishes are with regard to how you are taken care of after death. I personally don't want there to be a funeral for me. I think they're gross. I think they're disgusting. I have never been to a good funeral. Now, I have been to a few celebrations of life that I thought were very good and very tasteful, But I don't want to be remembered that way. I don't want people to come and look at me in a casket and go, oh, he looks so lifelike, or he looks like he's sleeping. No, he looks like he's dead. That's the way it is. Don't soften the reality. Deal with reality. Don't soften it. The fact of the matter is, after I'm dead and gone, I'm not going to be there. You know, that isn't me laying there. That's what carried me around for 68 plus years. That's just a shell of what I used to be. It's not important. It doesn't matter whether you cremate it, you stick it in a hole in the ground, put it in a pine box, whatever you want to do. Those are my wishes. My wife knows that very well, and she has the same feeling. She doesn't want to have a funeral when she passes away. And I do this primarily to save the people who are left behind, who will feel compelled to come to a funeral. And honestly, nobody knows what to say at a funeral. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, everybody else is too. But you know what? That is not particularly helpful. I often think the best thing to say at a funeral is, I'm here if you need me. If you need me for something, you call me. I'll come running. That's what you say at a funeral. And I think that's the most effective thing to say because everybody knows you're sorry and everybody knows how hard this has hit the family. And so if you have to go to a funeral, I think that's what you say. But when I croak, you ain't coming to my funeral because I ain't having one. I mean, first of all, they only throw the great party on the day they know you're not going to be there. Come on. What fun is that? I think I stole that line from a movie somewhere, but I can't remember which movie it was. Anyway, just make sure your family knows what your wishes are and that you expect them to honor them. And again, I think it's very, very helpful to have good, solid discussions with your family in the days and hours prior to passing, and certainly leave a video behind to tell them how important they were. But if you have to disinherit someone, if you have to leave them something inconsequential because they have not been a good actor during your life, first of all, I would urge you not to do that. I think that it's not a good thing to do because it leaves hurt feelings and it can have a trickle-down effect into that person's relationship with their siblings, with the spouse that you leave behind, all of those things. I would urge you to be as kind and equitable as you can possibly be when you write your will, understanding that only a control freak wants to control everything that happens after their death. The only thing I care about is that nobody else has to suffer because I've passed away. And I think that's a responsible way to think about what happens when you pass. You have to remember that you're going to leave people behind. And you want to make sure that you don't fracture any of the relationships that are going to exist after you're gone. And that's an important thing to remember. A lawyer can help you do anything you want to do in terms of giving someone gifts or denying them. And can usually write a will that is bulletproof and safe from attack later on. The question is whether that's wise, whether that's kind, whether that's compassionate, and whether you want to answer it for it at the pearly gates. That's a decision you have to make. So I'll leave that with you. I hope this has met the request that somebody made to have me do this. I would like to think that there are other things. I'm sure there are other things that could be included here. If you have any specific questions, please put them in the comments down below. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, you know all the stuff we ask you to do. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and catch me down at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.